Thank you everyone for joining us today for our Sweet Hour. We appreciate your presence and attendance. We hope that you will enjoy today's session, what we call our Sweet Hour. What we're trying to do is making sure that we provide good information, trending topics, things that are need to know, and resources that make our parents, family providers, as well as our caregivers, the right information that will be relatable and accessible to you for all of our communities. We want to make sure that we're giving you what you need. So if at any time you have a topic that you would like us to cover for our Sweet Hour, please put it in the chat and we will make note of that. For today, we are giving contact hours. For those contact hours, we only need a few items from you, and we will include that in the chat now. We need your first and last name, along with your email address and your center name, so that we can distribute those contact hours to you. Have any questions or comments, please include that in the chat. And our community coaches, Michelle and Kathy, will be able to respond. So they'll be watching the chat throughout the Sweet Hour today. The questions that I had up on the screen, what do you know about lead, were provided by both of our speakers today. They wanted to see what your knowledge, your knowledge about what lead poisoning or lead exposure is. But before I pass the mic over to our speakers, I want to introduce them briefly. We have Leah Gann. She is the Extension Associate and team member of the SAFE program with the Water Resource Research Institute at the Mississippi State University. She educates licensed child care providers about child lead exposure through drinking water, and educational efforts combined with water screening reduces child lead exposure through drinking water for children 0 to 5 in Mississippi. And then we also have Ms. Crystal, I believe it's Veazey. I think I'm pronouncing it wrong. But she is the program director with the Mississippi State Department of Health, Lead Poisoning Prevention and Healthy Homes Program. As program director, she oversees the programmatic activities, developmental program goals and objectives and activities that all relate to the CDC grant guidelines through Mississippi State Department of Health. And she also does care coordination, environmental investigations, and primary prevention and program development. So thank you, Ms. Crystal, and thank you so much, Ms. Leah, for being here. We hope that you'll have the opportunity to answer all of those questions that we previously had on the screen. So we have you pinned, and I believe you're able to share your screen. So I will allow Ms. Crystal to take it away from here. And can you share your screen? It's frozen. I believe she is frozen. She has, okay. Well, no worries. We'll allow her to re-enter into the room, and then it will pin her back. And in the meantime, again, we are giving contact hours for today. And I'm not sure if I introduced myself, but I'm Daisy Carter with Excel by 5. I'm being monitored, thinking about your time. So again, Daisy Carter with Excel by 5, Executive Director, and your community coaches are here as well. Michelle Wallace, you want to say hey, Michelle?
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Kathy, you wanted to say something? Say hello to everyone.
Hi, I got a couple folks trying to get in. That's why I keep going off trying to help them.
Okay, awesome. Well, tell them they haven't missed anything just yet. And I believe Crystal is trying to enter as well. So we'll give her a couple of more minutes to re-enter. Her presentation is actually first before Leah. She's going to break down a second part of those questions that we previously had on the screen. And there's Miss Crystal. Awesome.
Hey, I'm sorry. I must have lost connection.
That's okay. We have you now. So I did introduce you, and please pronounce your last name again for us because I know I said it wrong.
Veazey.
Veazey. See, very simple, very simple. Okay, Miss Crystal Veazey, I will let the tech give you the floor. I believe you have the opportunity to use or share your screen. Awesome.
All right, can everyone see? Okay,
Yes.
as Daisy mentioned, my name is Crystal Veazey, and I'm excited to be here with you today to talk about lead poisoning, what you need to know. So what is lead? Lead is a naturally occurring element found in soil, rocks, and water. It's a heavy metal, and it's been used throughout human history as an additive for a wide variety of products. When lead has been added to paint, it confers smooth coatability, it enhances color, and it helps resist corrosion. When lead is added to plastics and vinyl, it provides rigidity and sturdiness. Lead has also been used as a flame retardant, and some of those products it's been used in are Christmas trees and light strands. Most all American-made products today are lead-free, but we do have to worry about products that are made overseas in China because China doesn't have any regulations on the amount of lead that can be put into a product. And lead is also toxic to humans and animals. So why do we care about lead poisoning? Lead poisoning remains the #1 environmental threat to America's children. And for most children, their exposure to lead occurs in the home, but it could occur anywhere else the child may spend at least 6 hours a week, such as a relative's home, a daycare, or a school. And young children, those ages 6 and under, are particularly susceptible to the effects of lead poisoning. So why are children less than 6 years of age vulnerable to lead poisoning? One, they could live in a high-risk area, and we have 23 high-risk areas across the state. And these areas have been determined based off of the blood lead level data that we receive from providers and laboratories. They could have an immature immune system and their detoxification system, such as their liver, kidneys, and lungs. Usually children between 1 and 2, that's the age when they become mobile. They start crawling or cruising. They have a toddler gait. Also, small children, they're closer to the ground, so they can breathe in more things more easily than adults. They also have exploratory behavior or pica. Usually everything they pick up or touch ends up in their mouth. Immigrant and refugee status. We have to be mindful of the immigrants and the refugees that are coming into our state and make sure that they receive a lead test when they come in to make sure that they do not have a high lead level. Medicaid eligibility also puts children at risk, as well as certain nutritional differences. They also have a sensitive developing brain, and they're usually smaller in size and weight, which means that it doesn't take a lot of lead or a lot of lead dust to do harm. And they also have an immature immune system. So sources of lead. I'm sure you all are aware of any facility built before 1978 could have lead-based paint. And when this paint begins to peel, chip, or flake, it causes lead dust, which small children can get on their hands or toys and then put that in their mouth. That's the most common way children get lead poisoning is through the hand-to-mouth activity. Dust can be left behind from that peeling paint, and the dust could be on windowsills, on the floor, and usually the dust, you cannot see the dust. If there's peeling paint on the exterior of a building, you're going to have a tremendous amount of lead dust in the soil, especially usually up around close to the building. Keys, toys, and electrical cords have lead in them. With the keys, it doesn't matter if it's your house key, your post office box key, or your car key. They all have lead. So if the children are handling the keys and then putting their hands in their mouth, or they're putting the actual key in their mouth, that could be a source of their lead. Mini blinds bought before 1997 can have lead in them. And what happens is when the sun hits those blinds, the lead inside the blinds breaks down, and the lead dust could collect on the slats of the mini blinds on the windowsills under those blinds or any surface up close to the blinds, like a couch, a crib. Water and food can also be a source of lead. I know Leah is going to get into a little bit more about lead in water, but with the water, I did want to mention you have to be mindful of some of the rural areas of the state that may still be on well water. Usually the well water does come back positive with lead, and it's usually the brass pump that's used to pump the water up to the surface. When we talk about food, sources of food, this could be Mexican candies, certain spices can contain lead, and it's usually the way they're either manufactured or they're grown in lead contaminated soil. Jobs and hobbies, welding, mechanic, bullet manufacturing, construction, painting. All of these individuals could be getting exposed to lead on the job and then bringing that lead dust home on their work clothes and work shoes. And then we also have home remedies and spices. You see pictures of azacorn or greta, and these are medicines or like Ayurvedic medicines that are given to infants or small children for colic or upset stomach, and they're usually 99.9% lead. So lead poisoning symptoms, just by looking at a child, you would never know they have lead poisoning. The only way to know is through a blood lead test that's done at the provider's office. The chart on the left shows children and adults, and as the lead level increases, the symptoms or the health concerns also increase. In October of last year, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reduced the level of concern to greater than or equal to 3.5 micrograms per deciliter of lead in the blood. But I did want to mention that there is no safe level of lead. How lead affects a child's health: it can interfere with their brain. It can lower their IQ, cause ADHD, hearing loss, and damage the nerves. With the hormones, it can impair cell growth. With the stomach, they can have abdominal pain and cramping. With the reproductive system, it can lower sperm count. With the heart, say if when you were younger, you were exposed to lead as a child, and now you are older, you could have high blood pressure now that could be linked back to being exposed to lead as a child. With the blood, it can cause fatigue, lightheadedness, rapid heartbeat. With the kidneys, it can cause kidney failure, coma, urinary changes, and with the bones, it can slow growth in children. Lead is stored in the bones. So if you know someone who may be pregnant, and she may have been exposed to lead as a child, that lead is stored in the bones. When you're pregnant, your body's looking for all the nutrients it needs for the developing fetus. The lead could leach out of the bones, get into the bloodstream, cross the placenta, and the baby could be born with an elevated lead level. So lead poisoning is serious, not only for children, but also adults. Neurological impacts on infants and young children. Infants and young children are vulnerable to lead poisoning. Lead poisoning interferes with the formation of the synapses, which are the connections between brain cells, and damages the myelin coating on the nerves or the neurons in the brain. And the outcome is that elevated lead levels can affect a child's behavior, abilities, and long-term outcomes. So what can someone do whose child may be exposed to lead or have lead poisoning? Or how can you prevent it? You want to make sure you wash your children's hands and toys often, especially after playing outside and before eating. If you cannot wash their hands with soap and water, you can always use a baby wipe. It's very important that the children receive a diet high in iron, calcium, and vitamin C, and frequent meals throughout the day because lead is absorbed less on a full stomach. If there's an individual in the home who's working with lead, it's very important that they remove their shoes before they enter the home, and they also should change out of their work clothes and shower before they come in contact with the small children. It's very important to damp mop the floors and clean window frames and windowsills weekly using an all-purpose cleaner. You don't want to do any type of dry sweeping of the floors because if lead dust is present, it will just can be stirred up and it can collect on other surfaces. Keep your child from eating paint chips, dust, or dirt. Paint chips are sweet. They taste like candy. And have your home checked for lead before doing any remodeling or renovations. The Department of Environmental Quality has a listing of certified risk assessors and inspectors who are trained and certified to not only test for lead in the home, but also to remove or remediate the lead hazards properly. And does anybody have any questions for me?
I have a question for you,
Okay.
Ms. Veazey. With the lead poisoning, are there any symptoms?
There are no symptoms. No. Lead poisoning can mimic other things. It can cause stomach ache, cramps, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting. It can mimic the flu or just a regular cold. And as mentioned before, the only way to know is through that blood lead test that would be done at the provider's office.
And there is a question in the chat. What are the 29 high-risk areas or locations?
Okay, we have 23 high-risk counties. And what I can do after this presentation, if you would like, Daisy, I can send you a copy of the high-risk county map.
Please. Yes.
And these high-risk counties were determined based on the number of pre-1978 homes in the area, the number of children living in poverty, and the number of children with elevated lead levels in the area.
Thank you, Ms. Veazey. So if I live in a home that's older than 1977, I need to have a check for lead.
Yes, pre-1978, yes. Usually when we've done our home assessments for the lead poisoned children, we usually, if the home was built before 68, we usually find a lot of lead hazards, but they did not outlaw or ban lead in paint until 78. So, and also Leah may mention this during her presentation, but usually in regards to lead and water, if you're in a home that's newer that has PVC pipes in them, say that after 87, that's when they started using PVC pipes. So you may not have an issue with lead in your water due to the pipes in your home.
Thank you. Ms. Veazey, does anybody have any additional questions they'd like to ask? You're more than welcome to put them in the chat or just unmute yourself.
I had a question. Hello, and I'm not sure, maybe I missed it, but what is the correlation between Medicaid eligibility and, hold on. Yeah, vulnerability. Can you explain that a little bit? Vulnerability of children less than 6 and Medicaid eligibility. I'm not.
Okay. Any child in the state of Mississippi who is Medicaid eligible, it is a requirement of Medicaid that children have a lead test done at 12 and 24 months of age. And anytime between 6 and 72 months, if not previously tested. And this is also a requirement of the American Academy of Pediatrics Bright Future Guidelines. So if a child goes into a provider, say at 12 months of age, they will be asked a series of questions. Based off of those questions, if they answer yes or don't know, that puts them at risk. But at 12 months, they have to have a lead test regardless. And that's at 12 and 24 months. They're supposed to have a lead test done, and it's done through Medicaid, through their early periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment program, or EPSDT.
Thank you. I understand now.
Thank you, Ms. Veazey. Okay. Again, if you have any more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat below. And we'll pass it over to Ms. Leah Gann.
Thank you, Crystal, and thank you, Daisy. So I sent something in the chat a few minutes ago, and I'm going to send it again, and I will talk more about it as I go throughout my presentation. But I wanted to go ahead and get that link in the chat in case anybody wanted to access it. Give me 1 second. I'm having some issues with my presentation. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So while Leah is doing that, I will ask one of the questions that we had up the questions. What do you know about lead? Can you see, taste, or smell lead? And the correct answer, if you could put it in the chat, yes or no. Can you see, taste, or smell lead? Let's see if you all were paying attention to Ms. Veazey earlier. Thank you, Ms. Ashley. Okay, there we go. Some responses are coming in. Awesome. So the correct answer is no, you cannot taste, see, or smell lead. Thank you for answering. Okay, Miss Leah, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Can everyone see the main slide on my screen? Okay,
Yeah.
great. I was having trouble with the display for some reason. Okay, well, just to introduce myself, I know Ms. Carter gave a great introduction for both Crystal and I, but my name is Leah Gann. I'm an extension associate at Mississippi State University. I work out of Starkville on the main campus, and I work in the Water Resources Research Institute, and try to say that 5 times fast. It's a mouthful, but basically the department that I'm in, we work with water conservation on a bunch of different levels. We work with water quality control, with row crops and drinking water, private well, and I'm over the education outreach portion of our SIP Safe program, which is what I'm going to talk to you today about. And so I can get into more about the program in a minute, but a little bit about my background. I received my bachelor's and my master's degree from Mississippi State in horticulture, fruit and vegetable production, and then agriculture and extension education. So it's interesting that I wound up in this career, but I'm enjoying it. So I'm excited to share about this program with you today. Okay, so some of the topics I'm going to cover is a little bit about the legislation, about the lead in drinking water, and how all of that, how the legislation about that works. What is SIP Safe? How does the program work? We're going to talk about our water screening program, and then what SIP Safe has found, and then the future impacts of what I hope to see from our SIP Safe program. So lead in drinking water. So lead is introduced into drinking water when the plumbing components that contain lead corrode. The Safe Drinking Water Act was amended in 1986, and this banned the use of lead plumbing components in new construction and repairs. And Crystal kind of talked a little bit about this in her presentation. And then in 1991, the lead and copper rule further sought to control the lead in public water supplies. So basically this rule was enacted to make sure that the plumbing components that gives us our drinking water was safe, because they saw that the plumbing was starting to corrode, and they saw issues with that and how it could be harmful to our health. And so these rules were enacted to assist with that. So then this is where I fit into that. So the Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation Act. So with this act, it was amended in 2016, and it provided 3 drinking water grants. And so as you can see on the screen, these were the 3. And then where I come in is the lead testing in school and childcare program drinking water. And so that is where the SIP Safe program falls under this WIN Act. So what is SIP Safe? The program itself, the goal is just to reduce lead exposure in children ages birth to 5 years by screening water in qualifying schools and childcare facilities. So this is important for many reasons. We want to protect the kids, and then why childcare facilities? I know in Mississippi specifically, just from my experience and what I've seen is that, and what we as a program have seen, that a lot of childcare facilities are they're on one end of the spectrum to the others. They're brand new buildings that have been funded recently, or they're older homes that have been renovated, older churches, and that kind of thing. And so usually with these older buildings, they were constructed before the 1986. And so that could mean that the plumbing components could potentially be harmful with the drinking water. So that's the whole goal of our SIP Safe program. And we ultimately want to educate child care facility operators, owners, and staff about the dangers of lead exposure. And we want to talk about remediation techniques and how this can be beneficial to the children at the facilities and how we can keep our kids safe, because it is expensive to replace entire plumbing systems. And so our program is here to assist with that and to kind of work with your facility on how to decrease this exposure at a low cost or no cost way. So we are funded through the EPA, and we have this guiding principle that we follow, and we call it our 3 T's. But we first communicate, so it's actually 3 T's and a C. This is kind of our guiding principles, and this is what I follow throughout the education outreach process of the SIP Safe program. So we communicate. We want to do what we're doing right now. We want to communicate about lead in drinking water, the lead testing, and how to understand the results. Which is where Ms. Crystal comes in. I've worked with her for the past couple of years, and the Department of Health. They've been so helpful to help educate the public about lead in drinking water and just lead poisoning prevention as a whole. We want to make sure we have a unified and accurate message that we're sending out to the public about this topic. And so that's kind of where our communication piece comes in. And we want to train officials and staff at child care facilities about our program and about lead in drinking water to reduce the student exposure. And then we want to test the drinking water at these facilities. And then after we test it, we want to take action. So train, test, and take action. And that's the cycle of this program and how we operate. So as Crystal talked about, what is lead? It's a naturally occurring element. It's a heavy metal. It's been used as an additive in many different products. It is very toxic to humans and animals, but it's extremely common. It's found, as Crystal said, most often in soil, rocks, and water. And then, as we've kind of discussed, lead can be found in a lot of different places, but I want to show you this graph. And this is a recent discussion with EPA, a recent EPA analysis that looked at the relative contributions of lead exposure from different sources. So this graph demonstrates the relative contribution of lead from food, soil, dust, or paint, and water pathways for infants 0 to 6 months of age. So to kind of orient you on this graph, the water is the dark blue, the soil and dust is gray, and the turquoise is food. So each bar represents roughly 200,000 children, and with the children that have the lowest lead exposure on the far left, and then the highest exposure on the far right. So what this chart shows is for children at this young age group, water is a substantial portion of their exposure, so comparable to paint sources. So this is driven by formula-fed infants who may consume considerable amounts of lead through that drinking water. Paint is also a high source, and food is small because at infants at this age, they're not consuming food. Their nutrients are coming from their formula, and so their formula is mixed with water. So that's the main way that they can be exposed to it. And just kind of an interesting fact is that infants who consume mostly mixed formula can receive up to 40 to 60% of their lead exposure from drinking water. So in contrast, for toddlers 1 to 2 years of age, the water contribution shrinks because children at this age, they're drinking less water because they're drinking less formula. And so other beverages are kind of being incorporated, although they're still drinking water, it's not their main source of nutrition. So at this age, the most highly exposed children, is the column on the far right, are exposed through soil and paint. And this is likely because, you know, kind of what Crystal talked about at this age, they have a little more independence and they're crawling around the floors. They're closer to the floor. They can breathe that in. And then they're exploring everything with their hands. You know, a toddler, as I'm sure all of you know, they pick something up and the first thing they do is they want to put it in their mouth. And so it's their way of exploring their world, but it can kind of be dangerous if they're being exposed to lead. So hand-to-mouth activity is a big contribution at this age. But then also the contribution from food can increase at this age as well. But the takeaway here is that, yes, paint will use it as the driver of lead poisoning at this age, but water is still an important source to consider, especially just with this young age. So now I want to talk a little bit about how the SIP Safe program developed. So we reached out to cooperating state partners and we created a heat map through soil testing and some other factors. And then we found 17 counties that were at high risk for lead exposure. As you can see on the map, the Delta region of the state is kind of the primary side. But this program, I do want to state, we work with all across the state. So it's not just within the target counties. This is every corner, every county in the state. So we found that these 17 were at a higher risk just due to some environmental factors. And then we started with recruitment and communication in these specific counties, since they were our highest risk areas. That's where we really started. We started building this program up. So we also have a team at the University of Mississippi who also helps us with some of the sampling over in the Delta region and in that area of the state, because myself and my coworker, Nelson McGee, we both kind of handle this side of it, but we can only handle so much of one state for two people. So the University of Mississippi have been very helpful in partnering with us on this. So with the education outreach piece, this is our other cycle that we follow. I recruit, educate, sample, and follow up, and it kind of follows that EPA 3 T's that I talked about a few minutes ago. So part of the education piece, we have lead safety publications, we have flyers, mail out informational packets, push cards, water safety curriculum, and then online and on-site SIP-SAFE training, which is what you're attending today. So education has been a piece that I'm really excited about. We've gotten a lot of really good feedback, and I've seen more and more teachers want to implement this into the classroom, and people seem to really be enjoying it. And so that makes us feel really good, because we like to know that we're helping in any way we can. So the main point of these water safety lessons and these handouts that we have is to promote that there's good news, that lead poisoning is preventable. Specifically in our lane, the water side of it is very preventable. So we always want to lead with that. And so some of the ways that we want to educate people, especially obviously the staff and the parents and the kids in these child care facilities, is through our water safety lessons for children. It's a curriculum that we've developed. We want to assist teachers. We want to introduce the concept of water safety into the classroom, so the kids are also learning about this, not just the staff or the parents that we're covering. We're reaching our entire audience, so that does even include the 2-year-olds that are at these centers. So we want to introduce the concept of water safety, provide fun and simple resources for teachers and students, and then ultimately we want to teach the children to sip safely. So we can test the water at your facility and we can hand out all this information, but the biggest way that we can help keep kids safe is also by equipping the children themselves with some tools that they can have to kind of keep themselves safe, even as a 2-year-old as possible. So the curriculum that we've designed is activity-based. I worked with educators here at Mississippi State and other child care directors in the local area, and I went to them and I asked them, what do you want in a curriculum? Because my goal is, because I did not, I'm not in a classroom every day, and so I wanted to ask these teachers what they wanted. And so from their feedback, I created these lessons. First of all, they're aligned with state educational standards, so they're all up to standard. So we can rest in that. They are activity-based, and they are for ages 1 to 2 and then 3 to 5. I kind of split them into 2 different age groups. They can be edited as needed with the children and where they are developmentally, but that's kind of the main 2 age groups that I have within these lessons. And then there's 1 to 4 lessons per age group. And hopefully I'm going to expand on this over the next year or so. But for right now, we wanted to start small and start simple. And so they're designed to be taught in order. They are scaffolded to ensure that students are gaining an understanding of these objectives, and it's building on previously learned things, but they can be pulled and then just taught individually depending on what the teacher needs in their classroom that day. So what are they learning in this? So they're learning about water on earth, water safety lessons, or water safety, safe drinking water, the water cycle, where water comes from indoors. And these are some of the main topics that we talk about. And we primarily talk about, clean and dirty water, and then where the water comes from indoors, teaching them that, literally where the water comes from, they can go to the faucet and turn on the water. How does that get into our building? Things like that, the water cycle, and more of the science-based standards that they need to hit, you know, throughout their year. So we make sure we hit on that. These are just some of the pamphlets and things that are within the curriculum teachers have access to. So over here, the blue striped pamphlet on the far left. So this is, I think on the back, it's like a coloring sheet or some kind of activity sheet that they use during the day. And I know that parents get a lot of pamphlets handed to them when they go and pick up their children in the afternoon. But we hope that some of them will keep them. And then we also provide PDF copies so the teachers can email them out. But our hope is that, you know, parents can see the sheet, but they turn it over and then they would see this side. And it's just kind of a way to get the parents' attention about our Sip Safe program, and then just ways to reduce their child's lead exposure. And it's things that they can do at home. So flushing faucets, using cold water when making formula or cooking anything, you know, preparing anything for their children, using cold water first instead of using warm tap water to mix formula. That's very important. It's one of the main ways that lead leaches into the pipe, into the water from the pipes, is through that hot water. And then just make sure that you're flushing the water heaters every year, and following the manufacturer's guides, and then never drinking out directly of an outdoor hose bib or utility sink. And so then we have little graphs and diagrams for, and these are probably for the older ones, that talk about the water cycle. And then the chart on the right, the colored dots correlate with beads or buttons or something that the kids can use and make a water cycle bracelet. I've actually done this in the classroom before and the kids loved it. So we hope that the kids can make their water cycle bracelet, that they can understand what different colors mean different things, and they can kind of walk through the water cycle and talk about and kind of give them like a visual about those topics. So that's been really fun. This is an example of one of the lessons. It's extremely short, just 2-page, you know, one page front and back. It has the overview, it has the standards clearly laid out, vocabulary depending on the age group. We have, they're scripted for the most part. If the lesson's longer, it's scripted. And we wanted this to, I specifically wanted anybody to be able to pick this up and it be clear, and not a lot of preparation involved in getting this ready. Wanted to make it really easy on our teachers. This lesson specifically, we talk about clean and dirty water. The activity is more in depth, but you take, you know, 2 to 3 jars or water bottles, even whatever you kind of have, fill it with water, and then put buttons or rocks or something in it, and show the kids, you know, the water can be dirty, but then you put it through a strainer, and that strainer, you know, flushes out the dirt from the water. But basically we're kind of teaching them that, you know, by turning on the faucet and flushing that faucet, you can actually get the lead out of your drinking water. So just little things like that to teach the kids. So you can access this curriculum at extension.msstate.edu. It is completely free. I forgot to mention that in the beginning. It is all completely free. You can search the publication number, which is P3530. You can search water safety lessons for children, or you can search Sip Safe. And so this is all on the extension site. So you go on the extension site and you can search any of these key phrases and it will come up. And if you search, excuse me, if you search Sip Safe, all of our publications will come up. So not just the curriculum, but any handouts we have, any videos, and just you can go in there and you can see kind of what we're doing and what we're about. So now I want to talk about the water testing program itself. So this is still within Sip Safe. We kind of have different facets of this program. And so this is the part where we actually come into the center and we sample your water. So why is it important to get your water sampled? Lead is introduced into drinking water when plumbing components corrode. And for children, there's no safe level of lead. You can't see it, smell it, or taste it. So the only way you know that you have lead in your drinking water is to get it tested. And so that's why we're offering this service. And so it's a very simple process. The first thing we would do is obviously reach out to you, see if you are interested in having the water sampled at your facility, or you could reach out to me and let me know that. And then I would just need to have a quick phone call with you or a quick email, and then get a little bit of this information. This information is not required. The only thing that I need to know is your address and what time you're going to be there. Those are the 2 main things to let me in your building and to know where you are. But we would love to know the water source. If it's a private well or a public utility, that kind of thing. We want to know the building type, if it's commercial or residential. If you've had any construction renovation recently, or just since the building of the building, we would love to know that. We want to know the date of construction of your facility, and then the number of drinking water fixtures or the number of enrollment. Those are not needed, but they're extremely helpful for us because that gives me an idea of what I'm coming into when I come and sample, and then I can have an idea of how many sample bottles to bring with me when I show up on site. So then we would work with selecting a time and date for sampling. So the requirements for the time of sampling is pretty simple, but it's the one tricky part to it. I would love to come in the afternoon before. So I usually call a center. I try to come in either right after nap time and kids are, getting their snack or they're outside playing, or I come in after parents have already picked the kids up. My goal is to not make the directors or the staff stay any later than they need to stay at work. So I try to fit their schedule as best as possible. I like to come in and then introduce myself, kind of put a face with the program, and then take a walk through of their building and get an idea of how many faucets there are. So I'm talking kitchen sinks, bathroom sinks, hand sinks in the hallways, water fountains, any utility sinks, anything, anywhere the kids can possibly have access or be exposed to water. That's where I want to know. I need to know where it is in the building. And so then I take my sample bottle. I'm able to go around to count, label these sample bottles and get them set out. And the only reason I do that the afternoon before is because I need to come in early the next morning, immediately after my on-site visit, come in early the next morning. So before children are dropped off, before any staff or custodian, kitchen staff, anyone uses the water in the building, because the goal is to let the water sit in the pipes overnight. And then when I turn the water on in the morning into my sample bottle, I'm catching any kind of concentration of lead that may have leached into the water overnight. Because it needs that stagnation period to sit in the pipes for about 8 hours. So that's why I always want to come in. I always stress, don't use the water. So I will come in early the next morning. This is the picture of the sample bottles. It's very simple. There's nothing in the sample bottles. There's no chemicals. We don't have to turn the water off in your building. We do not have to do anything like that. It's as simple as let me in first before your kitchen staff or anyone uses the water that morning. I walk around, I turn the faucet on directly into these bottles, and I take one bottle. It's a 250 milliliter bottle, and I take that much water from every single faucet, and then I'm out of your hair before the kids even get dropped off. That is my goal. So I want to fit your schedule and not interrupt your day because I know that you are busy with the kids, and that should be your main focus. And so I don't want to add any stress to your day. So we caught our first straw sample. So everyone wants to know, if you find lead in my drinking water, then what? Then what is I will then come back in. If you do have any lead in drinking water, I'll come back in. If it's concerning, I will come back in and do a flush straw sample. So that means that I would run the faucet for a certain amount of time, then catch it in a bottle and see if that flushed out any lead. So if concentrations are concerning, I'll come back in and do that, and then we'll work on follow-up steps from there. So that's the sampling process. It's extremely simple. We then send the samples off to our state chem lab and get results within 2 to 3 weeks. So we have sampled 62 child care facilities in 30 different counties. So I know that number has increased over the past 2 months, but this is what we've had in our database so far. 31 of the 62 facilities have been sampled in the target counties. And 17% in those target counties have had an elevated concentration rate. So we are seeing that in these target counties, they are having a higher level of lead than the other counties in Mississippi. So basically, since January 2021 to present, 43 facilities have had 0 to 9% of their samples above the action level of 5 parts per million. So the future of SIP-Safe. We want to increase sample sites, improve recruitment efforts, student involvement. We want to get some college students from Mississippi State and from the University of Mississippi involved with maybe going into these childcare facilities and kind of helping with this process. We want to raise awareness about this program, raise awareness about lead exposure, that it can be prevented. We want to definitely remove the fear from all of this. And then ultimately we want to decrease childhood lead exposure. And so the next question we always want to address is that you found lead in my water. It is concerning. What do we do? Because it is expensive to replace an entire plumbing system. So in anticipation of funding for remediation becoming available, we're building a list of centers that have had their water tested. So if you happen to have higher levels of lead in your drinking water, you're going to be placed on a list, and we will keep that. And we are working on getting the funding. The EPA has given us the go ahead. We are just waiting to get that funding, and it should be within the next year. So when I have more information, we'll let you know. But we put on a list, and then you will receive that funding to replace water fixtures. And so we can help you in any way possible, so that it's of no cost to you and your center, because our ultimate goal is to keep the kids healthy and to help your center out. So that's all I have. I don't want to take up any more of your time. That link that I sent in the chat box, it's to a Google form. All it does is it gets your name, your email, your phone number, the name of the childcare facility that you're associated with, and then the phone number of that facility. So I call it the SIP Safe registration link. This program is completely free and voluntary. So if you just want to learn more information about it, or if you want to have a phone call with me and just ask some questions about your center, go ahead and fill out that Google form, and then I'll be in contact with you over the next week or so, and we can talk about next steps and maybe schedule a time for me to come in and sample at your facility. So again, it's completely free. It's completely voluntary. If you have any questions, this is my contact information on the screen. And so if you have any questions for me right now that I can address, please ask them.
Thank you, Ms. Leah. Hopefully some questions will come in on the chat. And in the meantime, I did include Crystal and Leah's email address in the chat, so you can hopefully copy it and paste it there along with that Google form. And again, if you need contact hours, please provide us with your first and last name, email address, and your center name. Any questions? Leah, just one quick question. Why is it important to get your kids tested for lead? What's the number one reason to get kids or the water tested for lead?
So you want to get your water tested for lead, kind of like what I've talked about a little bit is, water is the main source of lead exposure for these kids. And so if you get your water tested at your facility, then, and if you know that your water is free of lead, then you know that your center and the water that they're consuming, 6 to 8 hours a day at your facility is safe for them to drink, because ultimately you want to take care of their, their health long term. And so this is just a very simple way to make sure that what they're consuming is safe. And so it's a trickle effect. This is a very simple way it's a preventative measure to protect your kids and make sure they're not getting exposed to lead through that water that they're drinking every day.
Thank you, Leah. And I put up an image of the 23 counties that Ms. Crystal mentioned earlier. And that was one of the questions about what are those 23 concerning counties in Mississippi. And I have the image that she provided on the screen. And I'm not sure if you know, but Mississippi made national news today, and not in a good way, but it had something to do with water, of course. The struggles that we are still facing in the Jackson area. So this information that Leah and Crystal have provided us this afternoon. It's great information, and it just capitalized how important it is for us to make sure that our little ones are safe, to prevent any issues in the near future for them. So again, I have this map on the screen for you. So if you live in that area, you definitely want to reach out to Crystal and Leah for additional information on putting those safety precautions in place for you and your center. And I'll go ahead and email that out to everyone along with your attached contact hours. So if no more questions or comments.
Well, I have one question.
Awesome.
So I was, thinking about licensure. I would have thought lead testing would be part of centers being licensed. I was confused that that's not part of the requirement. Can you all speak on that a bit?
You're talking about as far as water testing for lead?
Water testing, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The current child care regulations, it's my understanding that there is no mention in there about testing your water for lead. The facility, though, if it was built before a certain date, has to have a lead test done or a lead assessment done to make sure there's not any lead-based paint on it. But we have been, or our program has been in communication with child care licensure to see if at some point in the near future they can include a requirement for child care licensure that they have to have a lead test done for their water. So that is something that may be coming in the future.
And I want to add one more quick thing. That registration link that I sent in the chat, that is not, if you sign up for that, it's not a binding agreement. You're not agreeing to anything. It's a completely voluntary program, or if you are not in charge of one of your centers, or if you know of a center, if you're, have any kind of connections and you want to get them information about it, utilize that link I sent, and I can get that information sent to them to kind of let them decide if they want to take part in this program or not.
And that Google form, Leah, they can also get the curriculum as well.
Yes, I can email copies, or I can email a copy to you. And then if you get your center tested, I can bring hard copies of that for all of your staff. And I can bring all those handouts to kind of save you some printing and that kind of thing. So just let me know and I can work with you.
Awesome. Thank you again, Leah and Crystal. Thanks, Michelle, for your question. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Awesome. Well, we're going to be mindful of your time. We're ending a little early, 3 minutes till, but we want to remind you to register for our 2020-22 summit that will take place on October the 4th in Raymond, Mississippi. We hope that you'll sign up and attend that summit. We have wonderful information. We want to give you some activities that you can do within your center with your kids or with your little ones. So we're really excited. I'm sure Kathy has a wealth of activities for us to do and resources that are going to be distributed to everyone. So we're looking forward to this in-person event. This will be the first that we've had in a couple of years, and my first event as well. So I'm looking forward to it. So I hope to see you there, and we hope that you are enjoying all of the quotes that we've sent out this month, along with social media posts that we are putting up as well. And please continue to send us your activities that are taking place in your area so that we can promote them, and so with that we can support you and show up and add support there. So hope to see everyone soon in October, if not before. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Daisy.
Bye-bye.